By late May 2026, the situation in the Strait of Hormuz has entered an increasingly volatile phase, as the United States and Iran have reportedly reached a preliminary agreement to reopen this critical maritime corridor. The new framework aims to extend the ceasefire for another 60 days and ease restrictions on shipping, though it still awaits final approval from U.S. President Donald Trump. Despite these encouraging diplomatic signals, security on the ground remains dangerously fragile. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC, continues to maintain tight control over the area with naval mines and fast attack boats, while the United States keeps up strong military pressure across the region. Traffic through the strait, a passage that carries roughly 20% of the world's oil, has dropped sharply, with only limited convoys moving under naval escort. Because war risk insurance costs have surged, most major shipping companies are still choosing longer alternative routes, leaving an estimated 1,500 commercial vessels waiting at anchor. Although global oil prices have eased slightly on hopes of peace, the prolonged crisis in the Strait of Hormuz continues to place enormous pressure on global energy security. Hormuz Island is not large, covering only about 16 square miles, yet it sits directly at the deadly bend of the Strait of Hormuz, where the Persian Gulf tightens into a narrow water corridor before opening into the open ocean. That position gives the island a significance far greater than its actual size, as though the weight of an entire global shipping artery has been placed upon a small piece of land drifting in the middle of the sea. From this location, massive oil tankers move through waters compressed into an unusually narrow passage, where each direction leaves only a few navigational miles, forcing vessels into routes that are almost completely fixed. Inside that confined space, patrol boats, coastal radar systems, and military observation posts appear in heavy concentration, forming one of the most tightly monitored stretches of water anywhere on Earth. On the opposite side, along the northern coastline, anti-ship missile systems with ranges extending on 60 miles, together with drones and expanding surveillance networks, project control far into the surrounding sea. In that environment, strategic advantage comes not only from firepower, but from geography itself. The extremely short distances between rocky islands, coastlines, and shipping lanes place nearly every movement under constant observation. But Hormuz is not only a military stronghold. Red Beach of Hormuz stretches across the shoreline in deep blood-red colors created by iron oxide embedded within the earth itself, transforming the entire coast into a living layer of geology stained by time. Here, even beauty carries the scars of harshness, as though the planet itself were exposing its own chemical structure beneath the sunlight. Though it remains only a small island, Hormuz still holds leverage over much of the world's energy trade, with nearly 1/5 of global oil supplies forced to pass through these waters. And that contradiction reveals something larger than geography itself. An island no bigger than a small city, yet burdened with the pressure of an entire global geopolitical system, where power is defined not by size, but by position. Shahid Rajai Port stretches along the edge of the Strait of Hormuz, like a vast maze of steel and shipping containers operating without rest, day and night. It is the largest container port in Iran, handling the majority of the nation's import and export cargo. Thousands of brightly colored containers rise in towering stacks beneath the Gulf's heavy heat and humid air, while enormous cranes move slowly overhead like giant steel arms, constantly reshaping the flow of regional trade. But Bandar Abbas is defined by more than commerce or the military tensions surrounding its port. The city is also known for its brutal heat, where summer temperatures often climb beyond 100 degrees Fahrenheit, while humidity rolling in from the sea creates a suffocating atmosphere that hangs across the entire waterfront. And yet, amid those harsh conditions, everyday life continues in the distinctly resilient rhythm of the Gulf. Beyond the container terminals and naval facilities, traditional fish markets still come alive before sunrise, as fishing boats returning from the Persian Gulf unload fresh catches along the shore beneath the sounds of bargaining voices and the heavy scent of salt drifting through the air. That contrast is what gives Bandar Abbas its unusual character, a place where two worlds seem to exist at once, one shaped by global trade networks and geopolitical pressure, and the other by a coastal way of life tied to these waters for centuries. Kandovan rests beneath the slopes of Mount Sahand, like a village locked in time inside volcanic stone, where people have survived for more than 700 years, not by conquering the landscape, but by slowly adapting themselves to it. Cone-shaped tufa rock formations rise densely across the mountainside, making the entire village resemble a gigantic petrified beehive. While inside those stone structures, families still continue their daily lives within rooms carved directly into the mountain over generations. In Kandovan, living space is not expanded with concrete or steel, but through months of hand labor against solid rock, where carving a single small room can sometimes require nearly 10 continuous months of work from several people to cut deep into stone walls nearly 10 feet thick. Yet those same stone walls create a rare natural insulation system, keeping the interiors cool during summer and warmer through the snow-covered winters of northwestern Iran's mountains. When temperatures fall below freezing and winter winds sweep through the narrow, snow-covered pathways, many families still leave the dark warmth of their stone homes to reach shared outdoor bathrooms under brutally harsh conditions. And today, Kandovan's greatest pressure no longer comes only from climate or volcanic rock, but from the growing silence spreading through the village itself, as many younger residents leave for Tabriz in search of a more modern life, leaving behind an ancient community slowly losing the rhythm of its own breath. Makunik lies isolated within the semi-desert near the Afghan border, like a village abandoned by time beneath the yellow dust of eastern Iran. From a distance, more than 200 small clay houses nearly dissolve into the gray-brown slopes of the barren desert hills, making the entire settlement appear less like a place where people live and more like part of the earth itself. Many of the ancient homes here stand only about 4 to 5 feet tall, with doorways so small that a full-grown adult must bend almost completely in half to enter, creating the unsettling feeling of stepping into a world built for a people belonging more to myth than recorded history. For centuries, harsh living conditions, limited water, and poor nutrition left many residents standing under 3 feet tall, nearly 1.5 feet shorter than the average height of most Iranians of that era, helping give rise to the enduring legend of the village of little people that still survives today. To endure in an environment almost entirely cut off from the outside world, the people of Makunik developed an unusually minimalist way of life, where generations lived with almost no tea, tobacco, or regular meat consumption, like most other communities across Iran, surviving instead on simple foods made from turnips, barley, and jujube fruit, grown within the harsh, semi-desert landscape. Today, among narrow pathways coated in desert dust and mud walls cracked by time, the lives of roughly 700 to 800 residents still move to the slow rhythm of livestock herding and hand-woven carpet making, as though the village never fully entered the modern world, but continues to exist quietly somewhere between myth and reality. Babak Fort sits atop the Arazbaran mountain range at an elevation of approximately 8,200 feet, where sheer, plunging cliffs and a winter sea of clouds make the entire fortress appear as an isolated stronghold suspended between the mist and the abyss. It was this treacherous terrain that, during the 9th century, served as the base for Babak Khorramdin, the leader of a Persian resistance movement who defied the Abbasid Empire for nearly 22 consecutive years, transforming this citadel into one of the most resilient defensive bastions in ancient Iranian history. The strength of Babak Fort lay not only in its perilous location, but in the way the entire structure almost fused into one with the surrounding living rock. To approach the fortress, one must traverse narrow paths, clinging tightly to the edge of deep chasms, where only a few individuals can move at a time, rendering any massive army virtually stripped of its strategic advantage as they ascend the mountainside. The walls were constructed from an ancient mixture of lime, ash, clay, and organic materials, a composite believed to grow even harder and more impenetrable under the biting cold and humidity of the high-altitude climate. Yet, after more than 2 decades of defiance, the fortress finally fell, collapsing not from the breaching of its walls or the sheer might of an invading army, but due to an internal betrayal, when, according to numerous historical accounts, a close confidant secretly guided the Abbasid forces through the citadel's perilous entrance. And to this day, amidst the swirling fog and ruined stone walls, Babak Fort still endures within the sea of clouds as a stone monument of resistance, where nature and mankind once stood together against an entire empire. Portuguese Fort of Hormuz rises from the red earth of Hormuz Island, like a scar left behind from the age when empires fought for control over the richest maritime trade routes on Earth. Built by the Portuguese in the early 16th century, the fortress once served as a critical checkpoint along the sea corridor linking India, Persia, and the Arab world, where nearly every stream of commerce was forced to pass beneath strict control. What makes this fortress remarkable is not only its history, but the extraordinary geography and terrain surrounding it. Its massive walls, built from coral stone, local red soil, and arched structures facing directly toward the narrow passage of the Strait of Hormuz, once overlooked endless fleets carrying spices, silk, pearls, and silver across the sea like unbroken currents of trade. From this position, the fortress did not merely watch the water, it controlled the movement of an entire intercontinental trading system. Today, long after those empires have disappeared, the structure still stands like a ruin worn down by time itself. Collapsed corridors, walls hollowed out by sea wind, and open fractures spilling sunlight into the interior resemble wounds in history that never fully healed. The wind still moves through the stone chambers, as though the fortress itself were breathing with the rhythm of the sea, exhausted, yet stubbornly alive. What feels most astonishing here is the geology beneath your feet. The ground holds no single color, but stretches outward like a massive sheet of exposed minerals where crimson, rust, and burnt orange dissolve together beneath the harsh sunlight. In that landscape, the fortress no longer feels like a military structure alone, but a physical monument to power, time, and the endless instability of this strategic sea passage. Rainbow Valley unfolds like a surreal landscape rising from the Gulf, with more than 70 different shades spreading across the earth, from brick red and ochre yellow to burnt orange, violet, and deep blue. The valley was shaped over millions of years by volcanic rock, salt, metal oxides, and compressed mineral layers forged beneath the pressure of time, wind, and heat. Standing in the middle of this landscape feels like entering a massive geological laboratory, where the Earth's crust still seems to be slowly rewriting itself through unseen movements deep below the surface. What makes this place extraordinary is not only what it looks like, but the way it becomes part of human life itself. On Hormuz Island, the local red soil known as gelak exists not merely as a mineral deposit, but as an ingredient harvested and used by residents as a spice in certain traditional dishes. Here, minerals are no longer lifeless matter meant only for observation, but part of taste, memory, and local identity, where people do not stand separate from geology, but live intertwined with it in an almost ancient way. From a wider perspective, the entire valley feels like a natural system, still operating in slow motion, where immense pressure beneath the Earth's crust gradually created one of the most unusual geological surfaces anywhere in the Persian Gulf. The landscape feels both scientific and deeply sedimented with memory, as though the planet itself were leaving traces of its own creation across every endless layer of color stretching toward the horizon. On the western side of Qeshm Island, the ancient village of Bandar-e Laft rests quietly along the edge of the Strait of Hormuz, like a forgotten trading port stranded between desert and sea. Rows of sand-colored earthen homes stretch beneath the blistering Gulf sun, while hundreds of Badjir towers rise into the sky like clay sails catching the ocean breeze. Known as the Village of Windcatchers, Bandar-e Laft still preserves its traditional Badjir tower system, capable of lowering indoor temperatures by nearly 18 to 27 degrees Fahrenheit during the brutal Gulf summer. As sea winds slip through the narrow tower openings, heat is pushed upward and away, leaving behind a pocket of natural cool air that existed centuries before modern air conditioning was ever invented. Instead of fighting the harsh desert climate, the people here learned how to turn wind, stone, and scarce water into part of a survival system shaped for life along the coastal desert. But the village's most astonishing creation lies beneath the ground. The ancient people of Laft carved directly into solid rock to create 366 water wells, one for every day of a leap year, transforming rainwater storage into a precisely calculated survival system in the middle of an unforgiving dry land, ensuring a stable water supply for the entire community. What makes this village truly rare is its location itself. Suspended between barren stone desert and the dense green Hara mangrove forest rising from salt water, where two opposing worlds collide to create one of the Persian Gulf's most extraordinary ecological crossroads. On Qeshm Island, along the harbor of Bandar-e Laft, the craft of building traditional wooden lenge boats still survives as an inseparable part of coastal life, where each vessel is shaped entirely by hand, using techniques passed down through generations, much like the way these boats once crossed the Persian Gulf throughout centuries of maritime history. In a region where modern shipping lanes, radar systems, and military patrols now dominate the waters surrounding Qeshm Island, the boatyards of Laft continue to move at an almost timeless pace, where craftsmen work without technical blueprints and rely instead on inherited memory, generations of experience, and an intimate understanding of every curve carved into the wood. Step deeper into the shoreline workshops, and the entire shipbuilding process unfolds like a living craft handed down across centuries. Massive teak planks imported from India and Africa are bent with heat and human strength before being assembled into enormous wooden hulls. To seal the vessels against water, craftsmen packed the gaps between the wooden boards with cotton soaked in shark oil, an ancient technique that still survives deep into the modern industrial age. A single large lange can require 1 to 2 full years of non-stop hand labor before it is complete. Long ago, these vessels carried pearls, spices, and silk along the ancient trading routes of the Gulf. Later, as international sanctions tightened around Iran, some lange boats quietly took on another role, helping many coastal communities preserve their livelihoods amid the unending tensions surrounding the Strait of Hormuz. With barren stone desert on one side and the dark green Hara mangrove forest rising from salt water on the other, those wooden boats still endure like the final surviving fingerprints of a maritime civilization that has never completely disappeared. Persian Gulf. Iran unfolds as a vast meeting point between deep blue waters and thousands of years of history. Once serving as a vital trade route linking east and west, its warm, mineral-rich waters stretch along more than 990 kilometers of coastline, reflecting sunlight in constantly shifting patterns. Beneath the surface lies a diverse marine ecosystem filled with coral reefs, tropical fish, and currents that sustain life across the region. Ancient ports and coastal cities still hold traces of civilizations that once flourished and faded over time. Yet alongside this beauty, pressures from oil extraction and environmental change are quietly reshaping the Gulf. Persian Gulf Iran becomes more than a body of water, reflecting the human dilemma between progress and preservation. If you had to choose, would you keep the endless resources or protect the fragile balance of nature? Hengam Island. Iran rests quietly south of Qeshm, offering a rare moment of stillness within the constant movement of the Strait of Hormuz. The surrounding waters are known for frequent dolphin appearances at sunrise, bringing gentle life into the calm turquoise sea. Soft white sands stretch along the shore, meeting clear waters where every ripple reflects light with purity. As the tide recedes, the shallow sea begins to shimmer like a breathing mirror beneath the open sky. Life here moves slowly, with small fishing communities maintaining a deep connection to the ocean across generations. Yet this very calmness makes the island fragile in the face of outside change. Hengam Island. Iran becomes more than a stop, a missing emotional piece, and in this moment, whose name appears in your mind to stand here beside you. Qeshm Island lies at the narrowest point of the Strait of Hormuz, the vital shipping corridor, where nearly 20% of the world's oil consumption passes every single day. This island, stretching about 84 miles long, emerges like a colossal wall of rock guarding the entrance to the world's energy gateway, where giant oil tankers silently follow one another across the Gulf's dark blue waters. From Qeshm, maritime activity across Hormuz can be watched almost without interruption, because the island sits within a vast control network running along Iran's southern coastline, where radar systems, military bases, and coastal logistics stations together form an unblinking layer of surveillance over every movement passing through this strategic choke point. In early March, Qeshm suddenly became the center of international attention after a desalination facility on the island was attacked, disrupting the drinking water supply for nearly 30 local villages. Iran quickly issued accusations, while the United States denied any involvement. The incident unfolded as regional tensions continued to escalate following a series of confrontations that had already begun affecting commercial shipping through Hormuz. Against that backdrop, Japan and several European nations voiced support for protecting the shipping route through Hormuz, although the European Union stated that it had no plans to expand its naval presence in the region. Amid mounting commercial pressure and rising geopolitical tension, Qeshm still stands like a watchtower that never sleeps over the Gulf.